Hello, entrepreneurs. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's good to be back on the air, and we have a great guest, Sascha from Cognigy. Hi, Sascha. How are you doing?
Hi, fine, thanks you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. You want to make time for us? Just a couple of notes for the viewers. Yeah, please leave your questions in the comments, and we try to address them right away or at the end. And it would be awesome if you can let us know where you're from, so we see the international feel of this community. So yeah, Sascha, you're a programmer, but you're also a customer journey enthusiast, as you call it on your website. You're quite broad, and you used to work at, for example, Amazon, and now you're working at Cognigy. I think one of the leading platforms that offer a great solution for enterprise organizations. Yeah, you want to add something to the intro, or do you think it's good enough?
Well, I think that was a very kind intro. So I simply would like to summarize me as somebody who is passionate about user experience and technology. So I try to bring those things together. And yes, to make it complete, I also have to deal with the business aspects. But this is nothing I'm passionate about. It's a little bit more about the use case itself and not that much about the money.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's a very awesome combination to be busy with language and words and tech on the other side. I really love it for sure. I got some people already reacting. Hey guys, someone from Hot Springs, Arkansas. Good morning to you, I guess. Yeah, so the title of this broadcast is Chatbots and Voice Assistants from Ideation to Conversation. So yeah, let's start at the beginning then. How should businesses define their first use case when they're starting out with conversational? Of course, it shouldn't be too big, but if you make it too small, yeah, it might not have enough value for the users. So yeah, how to deal with that? What's your opinion, Sascha?
Well, I think you're totally right, because if it's getting too complex, users might get lost in the conversation. And on the other hand, if you see the ratings, especially if you look up ratings for Amazon skills, then you realize that the easy skills, which have a very limited, let's say, skill set, only a few traits, those are usually more successful than the more complex ones. And therefore, I like to follow the crawl, walk, run paradigm. So that means start easy, make your experience, and then step by step try to improve the bot. But anyways, the most important thing is to set the right expectation. So that means a bot is somehow kind of a blank sheet of paper. So the user has no idea what he can do with the bot. And therefore, it's our responsibility to define the expectation, to explain what the bot understands. It's a little bit like meeting a dog. Then you have a special, let's say, expectation. If you meet a dog, then you know this dog can give you a paw, it can get a stick, things like that. And if you, for instance, meet a bird somehow, you have a different expectation. You probably won't say, bring me the stick or give paw. And with a bot, you start with a blank sheet and you have no idea what the bot is capable of. And therefore, you have to set this expectation.
Yeah, the bot has to introduce itself. But I notice a lot of people don't read the intro or the manual of the bot and just start typing or clicking and go ahead, which is also great. But yeah, how to cope with that kind of users?
Yes, this is definitely one of the most challenging things, and this is not an issue of the technology itself. This is very much related to the conversation design. It's in the responsibility of the conversation designer, of people who know how to deal with psychology and linguistics, with speech itself, and they have to design the conversation in a manner that the user does not get lost. This is quite important. So you need, for instance, kind of contextual help. a help which maybe has some levels, so you can dig deeper into the help if you need more support. Yes, you already mentioned that you need a very well-crafted welcome message, but as you said, people, they skip it a little bit, like documentation usually.
Yeah.
And therefore it's good to introduce traits of your bot somehow during the conversation, a little bit like meeting a friend in a pub, and this friend is an expert for, let's say beer, for instance, and you can chat with him about beer, and you talk about beer and so on and so forth. And then somehow at some point your friend, he says something like, well, a lager is a beer like this and that, but do you know, recently I learned a lot about whiskey. And then as a friend, oh, this bot, in quotes, is capable of dealing with whiskey questions. And this is something you can introduce during the conversation. And this is not only kind of a help, it also makes your users recurring. So getting back to the bot, because they know this bot learns over time new capabilities. It's more engaging, it's more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, by the way, a good friend to have, someone who knows about beer and whiskey. You should cherish that. Another question, like creating the happy part of a conversational experience is not easy, but it's not that much work, because it's more about all the edge cases where people might derail, or they will always ask things you don't expect, or show behavior you didn't foresee. How can this be tackled, and how can you maybe use a platform to tackle it on a more wide level for several bots in one go?
Yes. Design-wise, you have to deal with the unexpected. So there's kind of, let's say, rule, expect the unexpected. This is really important, especially because there's no such thing like an error in conversation. So the user can't make an error. There's simply something your bot does not understand, and you have to deal with that. You have to get the user back on the right path, back into the conversation. And this is literally what you have, again, to design in the conversation itself. But on the other hand, as you said, you can find a lot of those cases using happy paths, and there are a lot of methods you can use to try it out in advance to find those edge cases in quotes. Let's say the Wizard of Oz method. So you kind of act like being a bot in a playful manner. So this is one way of finding those unexpected things. But you can do whatever you like. You can spend as much time as you like in improving it. In reality, once released, once published, you will see there will always be something which you did not expect. And therefore, I recommend going the Pareto principle. So that means don't waste too much time on improving the bot before releasing. It's more important to have the right tool set to react accordingly once the bot is released. So this is a more important thing. And therefore, I like this CMS thinking, this content management system thinking. So that means you need a tool which gives your, let's say, subject matter experts, your editors, psychologists, linguists, the capabilities of changing the dialogues, the conversation on the fly once it is released. And this is something which Cognigy supports very, very good, thanks to its visual editor. It's really usable by almost everybody, and you can easily add new utterances to intents on the fly. You can add you really can imagine it like branches into your conversations. If there's a question you did not expect, it's just a matter of seconds to add this to your conversation.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about Conversational is that new requirements and ideas basically are thrown at you by the user. Where in an app you maybe wouldn't have found out that there's a need for something.
It's a little bit.
Go ahead.
It's a little bit like a life form, it evolves, it learns over time. So, and once
Yeah,
you
exactly.
realize that, it makes it way easier. And sometimes people think if they release something which is not perfect, it will fall apart. But this is not the truth. If you follow the Pareto principle, the users, they are usually quite happy. And if there's something the bot does not support, they are not angry about that. They are angry about that if the bot does not understand that 2 weeks later. This is what annoys users. And once you realize that, then it's a very agile thing to develop a bot. It's a little bit like releasing your small child to the public and helping your child to grow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so go live fast is doable.
Yeah. There's no such thing like an MVP, for instance, a minimal viable product. Every bot is kind of a minimal viable product, getting better over time.
Yeah, it makes it very, very agile.
Yeah.
And so we talked a little about the flow builder, which is quite important, of course, if you have a lot of conversations to develop. And the one of Cognigy, I tried it in the summer of 2018, is also one that's pretty nifty. And for example, there's a think node where you can just use some text, and that will be handled as if the user would have said it, instead of drawing an arrow back to the beginning or wherever you want to go. So what's the idea behind that? What's the advantage?
Yes, I like, well, there's several approaches how you can explain the idea of think. I love the idea of having a so-called frame design. So that means a bot can do almost everything at every time. Yes, it depends a little bit on the use case, but in general, this gives the user the feeling of being in control. And it's an essential part of conversations. So if we talk to each other, I can literally barge in, I can say something totally different, and you still will follow up, you will still get it. And this is quite important for a natural conversation. And sometimes people have, unfortunately, this mental model of a graph, of kind of a tree where you walk through the conversation. And now getting to the think node, this is something which easily can solve that. So for instance, if somebody says something like, I want to get a beverage, something like that, let's say, let's keep with this beer example, and then the bot needs more details. So the bot asks back, so what kind of beverage do you like, or something like, do you like a beer? Then say yes, say no. And this is just questioning back. And people have this mental model of the user is stuck in this state. But in reality, it's not just a yes-no state. In reality, the user simply can say yes, indeed, but the user can also say, instead of yes, oh, well, I like a beer. Or he could start with, instead of saying, I like a beverage, he could exactly start with saying, I like a beer. So there needs to be a like beer intent as a starting point. And instead of having both this intent as a starting point in terms of frame design, and then having this yes-no question with a branch inside my conversation design following up, I simply, like a real human, rethink this idea. So if the user says yes, I build a sentence which simply then means I like a beer, and I rethink it. So I inject it back into the dialogue flow, into the conversation itself. And this is something you can use to keep your conversation. So that means everything the bot understands flat. And it helps you also for more complex scenarios. So for instance, for keeping the context. So if the user says something like, I'm in Berlin, you can store Berlin in your context. And if he says then, I like a beer, then you simply build one sentence, which then is, I like a beer in Berlin. And you rethink this idea like a human would do that. And this is the idea of the think node.
Okay, and the trick is also that a human can change his or her mind and say, no, I prefer wine tonight.
Yes.
And the bot should be able to handle that. And so, like you said, it's not a fixed flow, a funnel that limits basically your options, and will definitely lead to some level of disappointment on the user side. And yeah, how can businesses use statistics to further understand their users and build further on the bot? What are good KPIs you advise to use?
Yes. Or there are plenty of KPIs, analytics you can use to improve the bot over time. Well, because you can measure almost everything. So like how many intents got hit, how many entities or for the Alexa developer slots are used, what was understood, what wasn't understood, how to deal with that, which channels are used. So there are so many things you can measure. But I like to give an example how complicated this sometimes is if you only use the numbers. So, for instance, if you have an intent which is executed over and over again, the question is, because you only have the numbers, you know this intent is used so many times, but the question is this a great intent? Does it succeed? Or is the user stuck in the conversation exactly at this point? And this is a challenging thing. And therefore, we have something which you can use a little bit like marketeers do it for their campaigns. You can inject in your analytics data special properties, a little bit like goals in the conversation to narrow down if this is a successful repetition of using this intent or a kind of a failure which might annoy the user.
Okay, yeah, that's very very valuable. Yeah, and I think it's also, of course, very important to, especially at the beginning, never leave your bot unattended.
Yes.
So always could be some agents or yourself checking out what's happening and being able to step in, of course.
Yes. And if we have GDPR, which makes sometimes things a little bit complicated. Because privacy matters definitely. But anyway, somehow, if you have the opportunity, not just using the analytics data, but if you have the opportunity to also see the text and the conversations itself, this gives you definitely way more insights. But this is a more or less legal thing. Yeah, technical wise, we can do that.
Yeah, you should for sure check your logs once a day. I think that's the minimum that's recommendable. Of course, we see a lot of ways that you can make an FAQ bot in like 2.5 seconds, so to say.
Yeah.
By scraping a website or connecting to a data source in another way, but those bots are usually quite flat, if you may say so.
Yeah.
It's one question and one answer. And what would be a good method or way to go to a next level from that starting point?
Yes, I think we have, and I would count FAQ bots to this category. We have kind of commanding. So in the Alexa world, this is kind of a one-shot intent. You say something like "turn on the light," "how's the weather?" I don't know, "what's my balance?" And then you get an immediate response. So that's definitely flat, but it could be more conversational. So that means the bot asks back questions, or it could be more task oriented. So conversational means you really try to chat somehow. You as a user say what drives you, and task oriented, it's a little bit the other way around. The bot asks you what the bot needs to fulfill a certain request. It's a little bit like, let's say if I have a recipe finder, this most likely might be conversational. So I say what drives me, what I like to eat, and so on and so forth. But if it's something where I like to report an incident to my insurance, for instance, then it might be more task oriented because I have no idea what to say. The bot asks me what he needs or what it needs, depends on the
then
persona.
The bot is leading. The bot is leading in that case. And in the previous example,
and the best bots, they combine all this. So they have some small talk capabilities. Where needed, they are task oriented. Where possible, they are conversational. And this way, the user always feels like being in control, even if the user is guided. And this is what we try to achieve nowadays. But maybe long term, it's getting more and more cognitive, so the bot itself can make its own conclusions, analyze things way better. But this is something which is totally at the beginning right now.
That's true. Although we have the feeling we go fast, we only just begun, right?
Yeah.
And if you talk about the persona in case of a chatbot, it also has to have a visual presence, of course. I always advise not to use a picture of a real person's face, because then people might expect that human intelligence and a bot that can handle basically anything and switch from one domain to the other. What do you advise clients or people who want to build a bot when it comes down to the avatar? Sorry, or the persona of the bot.
Yeah. Well, I think what people always mix up is the persona and the personality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those things are related to each other, definitely, but they are something different. I think for the development, you need a persona, and this persona, I don't care. It could have a real picture of a human person. It could be very detailed. Let's say you build a bot where you say our persona, because it somehow fits to our brand, the way how we like to speak, our language. It's let's say 35-year-old woman with 2 kids. Yes, that's a persona. But and this helps your whole team to align in terms of the attitude, the language, things like that.
Tone of voice. Yeah.
Yes, but if you build the bot, you shouldn't expose this persona one-to-one. Because as you said, a bot is not a human. And if you give the user the feeling it might be a human, this is somehow uncanny. That's really awkward.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, sometimes it's also not well received. You know, if it's your persona and your bot succeeds, but maybe if you expose it's a 35-year-old woman with 2 kids, there might be users which have some doubts about this personality then, because it's too concrete and maybe they don't like it, why ever. And therefore it's better to be a little vague on the one side, and on the other side to align a little bit more with your brand, with what you want to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. That are some good valuable points. Let's talk about voice specific a little bit more. I hear quite some examples of managers shouting, I want a voice bot, we need a voice bot, but they haven't defined a good business case yet. Of course, also a lot of great things are happening in automotive, health, cooking, manuals via voice and whatever not. The potential is, of course, huge. But what does it take to build a great customer journey on voice, and what are three important rules you maybe you live by when developing such a journey?
Yes, so if you talk about voice, especially voice, not just written text, well, on the one hand, because that's a really wide area, so I can talk about that for hours. So stop me.
I'll go
but
ahead.
yes, but first of all, technical wise, voice in a verbose spoken manner or a written manner, it's technical wise not that different. So what we do with Cognigy, it's we deal with that technical wise more or less the same, but in terms of the user experience, it's definitely a difference, and you have to deal with that. You have to design around that. Anyways, just as a side note, it's a good rule of thumb, even for written bots, to start with spoken language, because, and this is a very I think, the most important aspect of voice, because then it's a little bit more brief. Yes, brevity is really important. And my favorite rule for spoken language, especially because in reality I don't follow that rule, is the one breath rule. So no of your answers should be longer than one breath. This is quite important, because otherwise nobody will listen to you anymore, like in reality.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is the most important rule. And then, all this Grice maxims and the cooperative principles and so on and so forth. I don't want to bore you with that, because if you get into this topic, that's the first thing you learn on conversation design. But I like to give you one more hint, and to explain why people might struggle talking to devices. And the overall issue is that in reality, a life form, or let's say a human being, it usually, if it grows up, it usually understands way more than it can say, than it can express itself. So a 2-year-old almost understands everything you say, but it can't say as much. It does not have the same capabilities in terms of talking.
Yeah,
and with bots, with voice bots, with voice assistants, it's the other way around. Alexa and the Google Assistant or Cortana, they speak almost perfect. Yes, but they struggle with understanding. And this confuses the user, because the user thinks if it can talk that great, it must understand me.
Then it has superpowers. Yeah.
Yes, and this is something. If you realize that, then you understand how you have to deal with that. That this is the major issue. Why you have to set the right expectation. Why you have to deal with the unexpected, and so on and so forth. And yes, those are some of the rules, some of the guidance I like to give.
Yeah, and I have Google Home devices here, 4 to be exact.
Yeah.
But I don't think they offer yet the opportunity that they listen a bit more for a follow-up question. But does Alexa do that already? I think they do, right?
Well, they both do it somehow. The Google Assistant used to be a little ahead of Alexa in terms of dealing with context, but it's kind of a head-to-head race. Yes.
Yeah.
So if one releases a new feature, then the other immediately has something similar. So it's a little hard to follow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, Europe is very interesting with all the different languages we have here.
Yeah.
The Dutch is supported for a year now, I think, on Google Home. Yeah, Germany always comes before Holland, of course, because of the numbers. But it's
but not always. Well, it's not related to our today's webinar here, but in terms of the upcoming streaming services, you get it first.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know. Yeah, a year ago I had Philip Heltewig, the CEO, on the show, and of course a lot has happened. So yeah, what have you guys been learning from the market and from developing this platform and talking with customers?
Yeah, well, there are plenty of things we learned, but I would say the most important learning is, at least for myself, is that self-service and automation getting more and more important. So it's more about really supporting the, let's say, employee, your business contacts or your customers in terms of self-service. And it's getting more and more important to use conversational AI, so that means bots and so on, as a user interface for process automation. And those two things, yes, which are somehow, in most cases, somehow work alongside together with each other, these are really the important use cases in the market so far. And in terms of conversation design, we learned that it's important to understand that bots do not replace humans. They somehow support humans. This is also quite important. It's more like having a conversational AI solution to work alongside human workers to somehow support your customers, your employees, your business contacts with self-service and process automation.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe go back to the beginning. An internal chatbot project could be an ideal business case to use case to actually start with.
Yeah.
Although I do think that businesses like to present their technology to the outside world, but an internal project could also be great, of course.
Yes, and especially with such projects, it's easy to calculate the return of investment, because usually people like to ask something like, "How much does a bot cost?" But if you go the other way around, if you ask back, "How much money can you save using a bot?" Then this is really convincing.
Yeah, exactly. For those repeating tasks that people don't get very happy by doing them anyway, so they can focus on more complex stuff. I think that's the way forward. And to businesses new in the conversational space, would you advise to try to launch a bot that already has natural language processing embedded, or would you say just start with flow building and try some stuff, handling some stuff with keywords, and do that NLP as a next step, or what's wise? I don't know.
Well, I think it's usually kind of a combination of both. Yes, because thanks to improved machine learning, this natural language understanding works well, really good. But it is anyways something which deals with probability, with confidence. And well, some people say it's kind of magic, because the machine trained models, you don't know exactly how they somehow calculate the confidence. So you lose kind of control a little bit. And if you have a lot of intents, just imagine those intents, so what the user can say, and then you get what the user really wants to achieve. This is called an intent. And if you have a lot of those, the detection is a little bit like vectors. And if you have a lot of those vectors, they might somehow intersect. And it's really hard. It's very challenging to deal with that. And in this cases, it's good to have, let's say, kind of an addition, rules where you can deal with the concrete text, with key phrases, keywords, because then again, you have the full control on what you understand in your bot. So it's almost every time kind of, let's say, a combination what you have.
Yes? And the trick is also when you optimize one intent, it might infect the other ones, and things start shifting again. And
but
I some nice initiatives of startups to try to help in an automated way with this.
And again, even in reality, we as humans, we use both. Yes, we somehow deal with key phrases. So if we both might meet, hopefully, sometime in a pub, and you say something which I don't understand because it's really noisy, and I have not really an idea what you're talking about, but there are the words spend and beer involved. So I get those keywords, those key phrases. Then I probably will answer with yes. Yes, so there, this detection of key phrases is really efficient. And on the other hand, if we talk to each other and I get a little bit more about the sentence, I have my semantic memory, so somehow my trained model, which I consider to understand you.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice, all the parallels, with the human beings. Because that's what we try to do. We try to replicate ourselves, right?
Hopefully not.
Not completely.
Yes.
And to support small talk and also industry related lingo, I know Cognigy offers some lexicons, so that are basically a set of predefined sentences or words, and also I think entities. Do you update that database a lot, or and I guess clients can update them themselves or edit them, of course. Can you tell a little bit more about how this goes?
Yes, there are two things. On the one hand, we have those lexicons, which are simply a collection of phrases and synonyms, which could also be phrases. And we have some prepared for certain use cases, like, let's say, swear words, airport codes, first names, things like that. But one could develop themselves as much lexicons as he likes, and you also can add phrases to the existing lexicon. So this is more or less kind of a set of, let's say, slot types, entity types, which you can extend and develop further. So this is something we have predefined in our tool, but it's totally open and up to you what you do with that. On the other hand, we also have predefined Smalltalk. The Smalltalk itself is based on machine learning intents. And even that is something which you can develop on your own, extend on your own. It's a very modular approach. So almost every bot you build in Cognigy can be used as an extension to other bots. So you merge the capabilities of bots, and Smalltalk works in exactly the same way. But there's a third interesting thing, because we have full control about the natural language understanding, the model used. It's easy to add a model to Cognigy which might be domain specific, for instance. So if you don't need a model which understands everyday language, if you need a model which deals with, let's say, medical phrases, this is something you easily can integrate into Cognigy.
Okay, and so then because it's in its own domain, it will not interfere. Bother the other lingo. Cool. And we got a question from Ali Lohmani. Hey Ali, thanks for watching. Ali asks, how heavily do you use templates to generate more training samples? It's for sure an interesting one. I don't know if you want to answer it.
Well, what exactly? Sorry, we can't talk to each other. What exactly this is meant by templates for training phrases?
We need that follow-up question. Of course, you can generate a playbook, right? To run through your bot and see what happens. And if you want to really test with high numbers, I think then you need to generate more training samples.
This is kind of a automated testing. Yes, indeed. So we have a playbook. It's to keep it simple. It's kind of a way how you can script the input and then automatically repeat this input over and over again. So this is one thing we have to test your conversations, and you can also add assertions to those phrases to really check it. Maybe not sure if you like to if you think about extending the understanding, the capabilities of your bot, so that the bot learns over time. We have a bunch of tools to allow that. So we have one way that the bot can learn itself. This is something where you ask back the user, do you really mean that? And this way, the input sentence will be turned into part of the model itself. So this is kind of a self-learning approach, but with that you have to be very careful, because people tend to teach your bot something mean if once they realize that they can teach the bot something. And because of that, we have a very powerful editorial tool. We call it an intent trainer, and there you see all the incoming and not understood inputs, and then you can edit those inputs. You can assign those inputs to new intents. You can simply evolve your bot through this tool over time. And this is especially suited for editors, people not that technical.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, and Ali explained a bit further. When you have, for example, a database of all the airports,
Yeah.
You could of course make a lot of combinations, saying, yeah, I want to fly from Amsterdam Schiphol Airport to LAX.
Yeah.
And you could run them all through, maybe in an automated way, of course.
Yeah.
To save time and have some decent amount of test data.
Yes, and on the detection side, on the intent side, input side, you can deal with rules on the one hand, or you specify utterances where you have kind of slots, placeholders inside those utterances to see this is the starting airport, that's the destination airport. You place those. Depends on the technology. We call that slots based on key phrases. You can place those inside your utterances, but literally those are entities, however you like to name it.
Yeah. And yeah, when the bot requires a lot of information from the user, maybe for an onboarding process, conversational forms can be used. Can you maybe explain a little bit how that's different from a normal chat conversation and what the advantages are, both for the user as for the people building the bot?
Yes, this is an interesting thing, because I personally prefer the conversational approach, which is according to the frame design, so the user can say whatever he likes every time, and our flow editor supports that. This is what our flow editor supports in a visual manner. But sometimes the use case is somehow more task-oriented. As said before, the bot asks the user what the bot needs to fulfill the request. It's especially for routine tasks and things like that. And if you have something like that, then this is totally according to our mental model of a conversation. Because our mental model, even if we can say whatever we like at every time, our mental model is like a tree where you walk through and can go through all those branches depending on what you say. And our conversational process editor, we renamed it from forms to process, supports exactly that. It guides the user through a tree with a couple of questions, step by step, and you have some conditions where you can switch between the answers and follow up different branches. So this follows the mental model and is perfectly suited for things like incident reports, business to employee cases, things like that.
Yeah,
and now you might say, well, but then you're stuck in some states, so it's not conversational anymore. It's not natural anymore. And the best thing about Cognigy is that you can combine both approaches. So that means you can use a process, and at the same time, if the process can't deal with the user answer, it gets into the overall conversation. It will be treated like the frame design again. And this way, you guide the user, but the user at the same time has full control. And I think this is the best way to go.
Yeah, it sounds really powerful to use both, NLP and more decision tree in one flow.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, of course, Cognigy is not a consultancy business, but yeah, it's in the mutual interest to help customers succeed, of course, with their conversational projects. But how do you do this? How do you take client by the hand? I know you have a couple of frameworks to work by, depending on the size of the ambition, size of the project. So how does it work?
Yes, we are a product company, so that means Cognigy is the product we literally like to license to partners, to customers, and to make this as successful as possible for all parties, we have a a bunch of activities. So for instance, we have on-site trainings. We have trainings in our facilities to teach developers, designers, editors to work with our product. This is one thing which is related to our product itself. But on the other hand, we also offer workshops which are beyond the product itself, because we learned we are in the early days. So our partners, customers sometimes struggle with the conversational AI idea, and they need some support in terms of ideation, process models, conversation design. And therefore, we also have special training, special workshops based on that to teach also those topics. And yes, indeed, we leave our partners not alone. We always support. We are involved into projects, especially for the more difficult parts. If there are some issues, we always like to help. And this is also not just a business scenario, it's also in our own interest, because this way it's a little bit like evangelizing. This way we learn and we can improve the product.
Yeah. Knife cuts both ways, right?
Yeah.
And in case entrepreneurs want to try out your platform, they can apply for a login, right, at hello.cognigy.com. And
yes,
if I'm correct, you're allowed then to just build stuff, and as long as you don't use it commercially, you can go pretty deep with it.
Yeah, we have an enterprise version. You can apply for a demonstration access to use it, including things like a handover feature to pass a conversation to a human agent. This is something we have built into our tool. But we also have a community edition, which has almost all those features. Only the handover is missing, as far as I remember. And this is for free. It's only limited to non-commercial projects.
Okay. Yeah. Great. What's your vision on the future? Let's not look further ahead than 5 years, but what do you think the next steps will be, and what will the conversational landscape look like?
Yes, I think I have two answers to this question. So one answer in terms of conversation, in terms of voice assistants, in terms of chatbots. I think the customer's expectation will be that almost everything is somehow capable of doing that. And if you talk to your home appliance and it does not respond to that, it will feel broken. I think it's the same experience we had with touch. Yes. At the beginning, it was somehow new. Nobody could imagine that this will be something we have as a convenience thing built into our everyday devices. But nowadays, you see kids trying to scale fishes in aquariums because they're so used to touch that they can't imagine that something is not touch enabled. And I think this is the same with conversational AI overall. But in terms of artificial intelligence, so how smart might these bots become in the next 5 years? I have no idea. Yes, I think conversation will get better and better, but artificial intelligence might improve a lot, or maybe only slowly. I can't say.
Yeah, I think we for sure will still be having a job. Will not be replaced by droids. Okay. I don't know if you have anything else you want to share with the viewers or want to add to this broadcast.
Wow. Well, the only thing I can say is that I think we are living in exciting times, and what we are doing is really a lot of fun. It really is something where you learn every day something new. And it's also something where you can get technology and design together. And it's something you can discuss on an academic level, talking about natural language understanding, machine learning. But you also can talk with your friends about this topic and discuss their concerns, their fears, and ask them, where do you see some opportunities? What do you like to have? And this is something I really love about my job. This is something which really drives me, and I only can can invite everybody to do that, to talk about that, to try to improve this and to develop something new on top of that idea.
Yeah, and I think the general awareness about bots will go up pretty rapidly coming 12 months. Yeah, if I look at the Netherlands, all the banks, insurance companies, the energy companies, and also the government, they're all working on this and building their first bots. Some are a bit further than others, but they're all trying, and it's great to be part of this community. I feel blessed. We have no further questions via the Facebook comment, so let's just wrap it up. And I want to thank you, Sascha, for being on the show. And the next interview is planned on October 17 with KPMG. They also build a platform, so looking forward to that as well. And say hi to the colleagues tomorrow from me, and let's stay in touch.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
You.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.